Why are American tourists so formal to hospitality workers? People on vacation may be unsure of local customs, and you'll never fail with politeness and formality. Sir, ma'am are common ways to address people whom you don't know in the States. That is probably combined with not knowing the local customs, so they err on the side of formality. I worked at a restaurant and American customers were generally the nicest customers I had. All around nice to talk to and most still tipped, despite me informing them that it's not necessary. Also a Scot here. I worked as a tour guide for many years and I noticed the same thing. I was always a bit taken aback when someone referred to me as sir. It's not really something people do here. It's a sign of general respect and politeness. I always thought it was pretty nice. This idea that Americans are terrible tourists is just untrue, or at least it's untrue for the ones who come to places like Scotland. As an American, I didn't know we are supposed to act differently in different establishments. Lol. Usually we just want to make the job of the staff as easy as possible since we assume they hate their jobs. Growing up in a small business, my dad always had me address everyone who I didn't know as sir, ma'am. Eventually, I got yelled at by enough older women for using ma'am, so I switched to miss. To this day my dad, who is awesome by the way, top-tier dad, still gets distressed when he hears me say miss, because it might be taken as offensive. The number of old ladies who get super happy when I address them as miss is far greater than the people who found miss offensive. 0. My dad is still suspicious of this data. Generally speaking, Americans are fine with very informal communication, but we rarely ever lead with it. Sir to buddy is usually less than a few seconds of conversation. The internet is a horrible place to get a bead on how the average American acts. For example, Americans online are seen as political charged, but statistically nearly half of Americans are apolitical, and the portion that is political, the vast majority never discuss their political leanings. Which means the Americans you see spewing political rhetoric on this site represent an incredibly tiny portion of the overall populace. This phenomenon is so pronounced I gave a TED Talk on it. Honestly, in the US, not being overly polite to service workers in the way you've experienced would likely be seen as rude. There are very few food establishments in the US where you wouldn't give a big smile and thank you every time a server comes over. Whether it's a 5-star restaurant or a chain corporate environment. In fact, when you flip the perspective, some Americans find that service in other countries being quite casual is actually rude. Not all, but certainly some. Another thing is the fact that culture across the US differs a ton. If you're hearing ma'am, this person is like to be from closer to the South, where lacking excess politeness is basically a sin, whereas someone from New York or Boston might come across as more casual in a way you're accustomed. We're not comfortable using wench. I feel like 99% of American tourists are scared of being a stereotypical American tourist, so they try to act as kind as possible to everyone. As an American, I don't consider that formal at all, but it is polite. You can be polite in casual settings. Despite what the American media and Reddit would have most of the world believing, Americans overall are very kind, courteous and respectful to people and cultures. Very accepting as well. Of course, there are terrible anecdotes, but that's why they are called anecdotes. We Americans tend to be more formal out of respect to people we don't know. We might find pal and mate to be a bit presumptuous, so we err on the side of formality. If we get to know you, the formality will drop. People in the US who mistreat service workers are considered some of the lowest lowlife scum, and when they're caught on video, bad things happen. I don't travel the world, but I make an effort to treat the people serving me with respect. It's a hard job, and I try not to be the table they remember for bad reasons. Well, I was raised to say sir, ma'am, regardless of age when addressing a stranger or an elder. My parents were both in the military, which really drove that home. I am glad for your good experiences with Americans. Scotland is on my bucket list. Well-mannered Americans can show everyone courtesy and respect. I'll address the custodian, the server, the manager, etc. as sir or ma'am and not think about it for a second. It's just how I think others show respect for the person. They don't have to be a queen to earn it. As a server, hearing an American respond to me, yes ma'am, or no ma'am, makes me feel all fancy. Love it. They are showing you respect. Take it as a compliment. I am an overly respectful traveler because I assume people view me as a rude American, but I'm also respectful in general, so because believe it or not, most Americans are respectable. It's important to note that many Americans worked when they were teens waiting tables or in fast food, so they understand your lot in life.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.